Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome a guest whose career spans an incredible range in the music industry, Eugene Ruffolo. Eugene's voice and writing has been heard by millions. He's written, produced, and sung on hundreds of radio and television commercials, serving as a solo voice on 43 national television spots, and was even featured in the most widely aired TV campaign ad for Barack Obama's bid for the White House. His impressive resume includes appearances and involvement with pre-recorded segments for Saturday Night Live 6 separate times. He is the first prize winner of the prestigious Telluride Bluegrass and Merrill Songwriting Contest, which has to do with songwriters. So it's really, when your peers recognize you, I think it's great. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. He's also won the coveted Parents' Choice Award 3 times and received an award for writing the important songs of social change, which is so important today, especially today. You've heard his voice on major Hollywood soundtracks, including The Stepford Wives, Mission to Mars, and The Corpse Bride, and he's worked with acclaimed directors and composers such as Ennio Morricone and Martin Scorsese. I'm really excited to dive right in. Eugene, welcome to the Long Island Sound. So good to have you.
Nice to be here.
So I got to tell a little story. When I first heard your voice, and it was at the Cosmic Orchestra group that you played with in Manhasset, and it was just, you have a stunning voice, reminiscent of James Taylor to me, and very unique. And man, and thanks for being here. And shout out to Chris Marshak, because I had Chris on the program. He's played with you.
Yes, shout out to Chris.
And many others. He's a really great guy. But I want to dive right in to the album you came out with, 10 Good Sermons. And I really want to ask you, in setting up this album, you explore themes of like forgiveness and friendship and some existential questions. See, you got me so nervous because you're such a good voice actor that I'm going to stumble over my words. Tell me how you came up with the concept and
of 10 Good Sermons. Well,
yeah.
Well, speaking of Chris Marshak, so we do this gig that you are aware of at a Unitarian church in Manhasset, and we do it the second Friday of every month. And been doing it for several years now. And originally, it was led as if to. I mean, should I explain what the gig is, or?
Yeah, please. Yeah,
for the listeners, it's a Unitarian church, and they have a service the second Friday of every month. It was originally led by Reverend Jennifer Brower, who, I don't know if you were there during her days. Yes. She's fantastic, and. She gives a sermon, and it has a theme, as sermons do. And we're this band, incredible band, on stage with her, and she comes up with a theme for the sermon, and the sermon is punctuated by songs that illustrate the theme that she's delivering. So she chooses the songs, and we play them interspersed in the service. So I've been doing that gig for several years, and there was just a point at which I became aware of the fact that she would be giving these sermons, and I think, oh, that's a great idea. I'm a songwriter, so I have my little songwriter antennas up all the time, and I would think, oh, that's a great idea for a song. I'd be writing down little notes to myself, and I started thinking about it and thinking about how preachers and songwriters are not completely dissimilar in the sense that they have a theme. You seek to find a universal theme that everybody can relate to, and express it. But of course, the skill of both the songwriter and the preacher is to do it in a way that's original and interesting. You can't just say, "Oh, this is about forgiveness." You have to find an angle. That's what makes a great songwriter, right? And that's what makes a great preacher. I came to realize, right? And so I became aware of this similarity between the two, and I came up with this idea of writing a record that would have 10 songs. I came up with the idea of 10, just as it's a common number for songs on a record. I thought, what if I write 10 songs that have some kind of sermon-like theme, It's just a concept that I thought of. So that's what started it.
But you know what's amazing as well when you look at we have got a great preacher at the church I go to, and by the way, just to give my perspective of going to this service, it's really light in a way. It's not a heavy burden, and it's free,
Are you talking about
and you get to meet
the one that I do, or yours?
at the Unitarian. No, the
Yeah.
one that you do. Yeah, that was my experience. Is really
Right.
kind of light, and what kind of ties the two together between a songwriter and a good preacher are good storytellers.
Exactly.
And when you think of a song and it brings you back to that lesson, it's just kind of a magical place. So it's really cool. So I got to ask you this: you're from Westchester originally, and you hit New York City at 21, probably the most competitive music town in the world. How'd you find your way?
Good question. The same way anybody finds their way, I guess. You start diving in, going out, trying to network, trying to meet people, making connections, and sooner or later, if you stick at it, and you're good at what you do, you begin to be recommended for things. It's all word of mouth and connections, and I just plugged away, until I feel like it took me, all of my 20s before. Well, that's when I broke into doing session work, which was a really huge turning point for me. I was 30, so I feel like I got to New York. I guess it was around 22. So it took. It's funny too because when you're in your 20, looking back, that doesn't sound like a very long time, but 8 years when you're 20, it seems like you're really paying your dues.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for my 20s. I was doing gigs and doing weddings and doing bar gigs and doing all kinds of stuff, but always trying to get into that world of sessions, which is sort of the holy grail for a singer in New York. And eventually,
now who, from your experience, you said it's about networking, obviously making yourself available, probably not saying no to a lot of things. Right. Who, is it the producer that pulls in the session musician? Is it a combination? What really helped you in your career to be wanted? And then who pulled you into different recordings? And tell us some of the people you worked with too.
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's not really that way now. Things have changed a lot. But when I was doing jingles, commercials was like what everybody wanted to do, because that's like, if you're going to be a musician, first of all, if you're pursuing your own music, as I always was as a songwriter, and you want to have whatever you want to call a day gig, that's the ideal day gig, right? Because you're doing it meets the perfect criteria. It's a short amount of time. You're going to do a session, and you can make a lot of money. That's the best combination. You're not stuck in a job 9 to 5 where you don't have time for your own work, and you can make a lot of money in a short period of time. That's a perfect formula, and you're meeting incredible musicians, because the best musicians. People sometimes don't realize this. They'll turn the TV on, they hear some dumb commercial, they think it's whatever, but that's a very high level of, and again, it's a little different now, but at that moment that I was in was it was a golden period, and there was tremendous amount of talent, and you're singing in that world, the commercial world, which again was what I was trying to break into, and all the musicians around are the best musicians that are touring with with the most famous people. They're the best session musicians. So you're exposed to all this incredible talent. And that's where I met a lot of the people that are on my records. And my friend Ben Wish, I don't know if do you know Ben?
Yes.
So he's, a great producer. He's one of my closest friends now, but that's where we met. And we started recording, working on my music, and we've been doing that ever since. So it just forged all these incredible relationships in that period.
So now I'm trying to understand the progression, I guess. So you're a singer-songwriter, you're doing whatever you can do, right? Weddings, that sort of thing. I looked at an old interview you did, and you're like, hey, I'm not an open mic type of guy. A lot of people are, they found success in doing so and getting those introductions. But then I assume, did you start writing your own jingles? And then the lucrative part of it, I'm curious, is like you paid for the day to sing on somebody's song, or is there residuals that involved with it?
Yeah,
Or,
in
yeah,
the
how does the math work? Because it always confuses. I'm not good at math. So.
in the world of jingles, it's all about singing because singers make all the money. So there are writers, there are players, there are producers. There's different people that are working it, but the singers are the ones that make all the money because they're in SAG and AFTRA, which is a union that just has.
Yep.
They just forged better deals when they originally, came up with their agreements. So it's all. I mean, I did write a number of commercials and I played on them as well. I sort of did everything. I did voiceovers. I was pretty much involved in every aspect of commercials other than on camera. I never really did on camera, as an actor, but I did everything else. But the singing is that was where I did most of my work because that was what I was called most to do. That's the place you want to be. And yes, at the time there were residuals, and it was.
All right, cool. All right, so there's some do re mi coming through. By the way, I just want to remind the audience, hey, please comment and look in the description. We're going to have all these different links for Eugene's music and his extensive background. And I got to tell you this. I think I told you this off camera. I was blown away by the different voices that you do, and you speak Italian, maybe some other language I don't know, but it just kind of. It blew me away. You had this whole voice demo MP3, and I'm like, this is the same guy? Wow, this is so cool. It's just, was that always you? Or did you move into different voices, I guess?
Well, that's a good question.
My question.
Was that always me? I think so. Even as a child, I was always very imitative. I was always kind of imitating things, doing impressions of people. Yeah, I always sort of leaned in that direction, and of course, if you're a session musician, that's a great skill to have because you're often called to do different things. Because usually, when you're called to do something, there's always a direction. We want this to sound like a Springsteen, or there's always some sort of reference, that musical reference. So it's good to be able to be versatile.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not everybody has that skill of mimicking or intimidating. Not intimidating.
Imitating.
Imitating, yeah, that. Imitating, but not being intimidating. And it goes back to, I think about when I first picked up the guitar, I realized, soon enough that you train yourself on the mechanics of the instrument, but you really have to have a trained ear to follow through. And I think that's probably one of the skills that you've honed over time to do these different things in your career. It's pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everybody, when you're learning an instrument, you're always imitating something, right? That's how everybody starts, right, with imitation before you develop your own voice on an instrument or singing or whatever. Yeah.
Hey, I want to switch gears a minute. I want to talk about, so you've done work in Europe, right? You've got some fans in Europe. And then you did a collaborative album in a German studio. Right. And from what I recall, that's with Dennis Cohn and Shane Alexander. Right. Is that correct? And you had a mutual respect for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Tell me about that experience and about working in that studio.
Well, the way that came about was I recorded this record called The Hardest Easy. I had 2 records out that were, just to give you a quick overview. The first time I got a record deal,
please. My
first record deal was on a Japanese record label. Very big label, and I got a huge budget. It was fantastic. So I recorded this great record, and for some reason, after it was all over, the Japanese decided not to release it for reasons that I still to this day do not know, because the Japanese are very interesting to deal with culturally. It's like it's a whole other world. And so I made this record, and it never came out, and I was very frustrated by that. It was disappointing.
Oh, man.
I always loved Europe in general, so I always had this fantasy of like, I want to find a way to go there and make money rather than spend money, you know? So I thought, let me try to get something going there. So I took that record, and I managed to get a distribution deal in a record label in Holland. And so I started, and then they started bringing me over to do shows. So I started going over there and touring, and I did. I released 2 records, or I made that was that first record. Then I did another record on my own that I financed myself, and distributed it in Europe as well. Then I did a third record, and I had a manager over in Europe, and he was kind of a businessman it turned out he was a huge fan of mine, and a very successful businessman. And he approached me and said,
good combo.
Yes, a good combo. And he said, he was asking me, what's this label doing for you? He was frustrated. He didn't think they were doing enough. So he decided, and he went and looked at the numbers. He said to me, I remember he said to me, like, well, how much do they pay you every time you sell a record? And, being a classic artist, I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And he thought that was an incredible answer. He was like, you don't know, because as a businessman, he was inconceivable to him that I wouldn't know what my, it was a classic example of an artist versus a bubusinessman, So he said, well, that's it. We can make more money doing it ourselves. So he decided he was going to try to take the record. He's going to create his own little label, and we were going to release it. But then he came up with the idea of trying to shop it to other labels, and he found this label in Germany. He was trying to get them to release the record, and they were this audiophile label, so they're all about very hi-fi recordings. And even though my record sounded great, produced and mixed by Ben Wish, who's fantastic, they said, well, we love the music, but we want to re-record it. So
wow.
They gave me a record deal. And that was the beginning of my association with them. And then I went on to record 3 records with them in Germany, on this label in Germany. One of which was with those other 2 songwriters that you just mentioned, Dennis Cohen and Shane Alexander.
Now, I know every studio is different. Every producer is different. Was there something unique about doing something in Europe as opposed to doing it in a studio in the United States?
Well, of course, it was just fun. It was just an exotic experience to go over to Europe and record. So that in and of itself was interesting. This particular studio was quite amazing because it's an audiophile studio, very, very high quality recordings, and it was located in this little town in Germany, and their facility was a studio. It was down in the basement, and it was like in a building that was 600 years old or something. So it was an incredible, just the spot itself was amazing. You went down these steps, it was like going in this, into the catacombs or something like that. And there was this state-of-the-art studio. So that it was cool. It was fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, now let's switch to, I was really fast. One, it's so funny. When I go see somebody and you catch their talent, you go, wow, this guy's, he's the real deal, right? And then what's always running in my mind, maybe why this podcast exists, is what the heck is their story? Why do they do what they do? How do they develop the muse? I mean, you talked about, always having your antenna, the muse antenna up, I guess, per se. And, how did you go into now, how'd you land the Barack Obama deal? I mean, how did that come about? I mean, that's fascinating. I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan too. That story's interesting because it was my birthday. And I had, I just remember it so clearly because it was my birthday, and my girlfriend at the time had made a reservation at my favorite restaurant in New York. And it was very hard to get into, so she, instead of making a dinner reservation, she was able to get a lunch reservation. And I was excited to go to this place and get up in the morning and get this call, from a producer. And you're asking how it happened, but again, it's just like I don't even know how this person found me. It's just word of mouth, like I said.
Right.
So somehow somebody had recommended me to this guy, and he calls me out and says, I guess my agent called me up and said, we have this job for you. And I was thinking, I don't want to I don't want to work. It's my birthday, you know. And they said, well, it's
Right.
for it's for the Barack Obama campaign. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. You know, that makes it a little more interesting, you know, it being a little piece of history. So, so that's it. That's how it happened. So
And it was, if I recall, tell me if I'm right or wrong, it was like a song parody,
it was,
right?
yeah,
That you,
it was the song. I don't know much, you know, don't know much about history. Don't know. And it was
right.
John McCain and Barack Obama. It was basically the Barack Obama campaign saying that McCain didn't know much
disparaging
about.
his
Yeah,
opponent.
it was tame by today's standards, but it yeah, that's what it was. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, right. By today's standards, which there
right,
are no standards now today. In fact, speaking about James Taylor, I think I saw a photo of you and James Taylor.
yeah.
Is that you get to meet him? Nice
I met him a
guy, I
couple times. I don't
assume.
know where did I wasn't aware there was a photo out there with me. Never.
Eugene, I don't fool around here. I do a little bit. I got other pictures I
Yeah, I
can't
can
talk about.
imagine. You seems like you're coming right into my apartment because I'm not sure where you saw that photo.
The key's under the mat, by the way. I wouldn't leave it there anymore because it's you never know
There you
who's
go.
gonna who's gonna walk in and go with that. Tell me about. We're gonna do some name dropping if that's okay, because I saw this and I'm like, Run DMC, what? Spyro Gyra, other end of the spectrum. Tony Bennett, Garth Brooks. Tell me about those experiences and how you got plugged into
Yeah.
those.
Well, again, I'll go in just in order of people you mentioned. So Run DMC and Spyro Gyra were both records I got called to sing on. I don't remember. I honestly don't even remember now how. They were just, again, they're just
Okay.
somebody recommending me to sing. And obviously, those are musical styles that are very unlike my own. But for some reason, whatever they needed in that recording, they thought I was going to be a good call for that. So I got called randomly for those two things. Don't-
And Spyro, just let me interrupt. Spyro Gyra is mostly instrumental
Right,
jazz, right?
right.
It's very rare
Yeah,
that they have vocals that
exactly.
are
But I
tied
think it
into
was a Latin track of some sort, and there was some kind of background vocals that and somebody recommended me to do it, as I recall. Yeah, I think it was probably an unorthodox track for them, or something particular. Run
It's
DMC. I
amazing.
don't
It's
remember
it's
at all what I did on that record. It was a long time ago. But
all right. What about Tony Bennett?
Tony Bennett, I didn't. That's a little bit. That's a little bit of a
Stretch?
fudging of my resume. Yeah, that was. I got called to sing background vocals for Garth Brooks, and he was
Okay.
doing a TV special, a Christmas special,
All
filmed
right.
at Rockefeller Center, and it was a Christmas special, and there were a number of guests, and one of them was Tony Bennett. So, like, I was on the same show with Tony Bennett. I didn't specifically
Yeah.
work with him. I wish I had,
It's
because
like
he's
when you.
a huge,
Oh
he's a
God.
huge Tony Bennett fan.
Yeah. What a beautiful soul. What a way to sing. And once Lady Gaga connected with him and did what she did
Mm-hmm.
for him and with him was just a beautiful moment, and
It was.
it just really opened my eyes to her full talent.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's
talk about versatile. That she's a very versatile singer, right? Go from
oh yeah,
all the different things that she does all really well. Yeah,
right.
and it's true that Tony Bennett, because a lot of times you get older musicians who collaborate with younger musicians, and it seems sort of
Forced.
or just calculated or whatever. And I'm sure it was calculated on some level. I know it was a career move of some sort, but it seemed like a very genuine connection. It seemed like a great connection between those two. Don't you think?
Yeah. You know what is, and I think what's really kind of nice about it, and as I've talked to other people, particularly here on Long Island, there's this one guy, Bill Herman, who does a lot of albums that with the local talent here on Long Island. And he did Hank Williams album, and it you know what it did for me? It just brought Hank Williams alive. You know, I knew some of his songs, but not all of his songs. And then when you hear people's interpretation of the classics, I'll say, it's man, don't forget your music history.
Oh, I love Hank Williams too.
Yeah, it's just just amazing,
Amazing.
right? The he's like a Buddy, the Buddy Holly, these guys who banged out crap before they would great music before they ever made it to 30.
I mean, Tony. Just going back to Tony Bennett for a minute, I always think that I always consider myself, too cool to be taking photographs with people, but like I always regretted not taking a photograph with Tony Bennett after that show. I was like, I should have, because I used to think when he was still alive, I was like, this is like one of the last great living jazz singers, and I should have taken a picture with him,
Right, but you were there. You were there. You have that memory, and kudos out to his son, because I think his son really brought him back into the limelight.
I think his son was responsible for the collaboration with Lady Gaga too. I think.
Yeah.
Well, he was.
Probably
I know that it was a mission of his to introduce, along the lines of what you were saying, to introduce Tony Bennett to younger generation, and it was effective, Yeah.
Agreed. Hey, let's do this, Eugene. Let's just take a quick break. And when we come back, I'd really love to talk about your work with movies and soundtracks and that, because I find that intriguing as well. Hey, we're with Eugene Ruffolo. Am I saying it right? Ruffalo?
Well,
Ruffalo?
I say Ruffalo, but Ruffalo is actually is the correct pronunciation.
See, I researched that too. I'm lying. I'm bullshitting you. Hey, everybody, we'll be right back. Stick with us.
The Long Island Sound is here to help you connect with local artists. Follow us on Instagram for the latest up-to-date podcast episodes, and also to connect with your local artists and their upcoming shows.
Hey, everybody, we're back with Eugene Ruffolo. I'm Steve Yusko, host of Long Island Sound, your not-so-humble host. And, Eugene, I really want to ask you about working with movie directors and movie soundtrack composers. Give me some insight into that world as compared to like being studio work and your own songwriting.
I mean, it is studio work. It's really the same process.
Okay.
Just getting called from, once again, just being known as a singer in New York, and just getting called for various projects. So it's really more or less the same process.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like I'm having any direct relationship with those composers. It's more through whoever is, there's a contract, or people who contract singers for a job, or musicians for that matter. There's what they call the contractor, who's the person who's finding the musicians for a particular session. So, someone comes in, George Lucas or whatever has a film, comes in, or whoever's dealing with the music for the film comes in the city, they're going to record, they contact a contractor, someone they know has a lot of contacts and knows the musicians and singers in town, and says, I need 20 singers, or I need 10 singers, or I need a bass player, or I need a violin, whatever. And so
kind of mixing all the ingredients in, right?
Right. So again, it's a question of knowing those contractors, having relationships with them, and so you're one of the people they call.
What's interesting is listening to to me it was just like one or two guys that do the movie trailers, in theaters soon, blah blah blah,
Voiceovers,
the voiceover. Have you done voiceover work like that as well?
I have. Not that. No, I don't have that type of voice, but I've done.
You don't have that commanding. Yeah, it's too nice.
That's like kind of sort of an old school model, that kind of traditional voiceover announcer voice. It's not so in style anymore as it used to be. I guess maybe you hear it in those movie trailers, but
not like they used to. Right?
No, that used to be like that was the voice. That was what voiceover people sounded like, and now, like a lot of things, it's more geared towards sounding like an average person or sounding like a normal person.
Now, I want to bring up a touchy subject. AI.
Oh boy.
And I experiment with it. Okay. I used, my daughter told me about it. It's called Notebook LM from Google. You can put different resources in. You know, I could take all your interviews, which I did, and it'll go through it and give me bullet points, but it'll also make a podcast of two people talking, which is crazy.
Really?
It'll do that. And then they have this thing called interactive mode. This is frightening. This is Frankenstein frightening, okay? I forget who I was asking about, but they were mispronouncing the guy's last name. And I could interact with the AI and say, no, it's pronounced blah, blah, blah. It took me 3 times. And they actually thank you, saying, thank you, we want to be accurate. And then they got it right.
Wow.
Okay. It is, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a tool, but it's like fire. You know, there's a lot of danger to it. I want your opinion on it, particularly about writing music, about people copying your voice, copying other people's music. You know, what do you think?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't thought about it. It's strange. It's something I haven't read a huge amount about. I don't know if it's just because I don't want to know.
Right. Don't open that closet.
Yeah. But like what you're telling me is amazing. I don't know that much about it. I of course I know about it to some extent. It is terrifying, the idea that I've been told by people. I mean, you're saying that you've experimented. I haven't experimented with it at all. Never. I know most people have done Chat GBT or something. I've never done it at all. But I have heard from people that, you know, you can plug in various prompts and it'll write a song in like 3 minutes that is really quite good, you know. And people tell me, I've done it and it's amazing how good it is. And that's scary, just the idea that you know, something you've spent your entire life working on and honing a craft is going to become obsolete by me. You know, it's so disturbing in a way that I think it's one of the reasons I haven't given it more of my focus. Now, it'd be nice to think that when you're discussing art and creativity, that a machine would lack something. It wouldn't be able to have the same, you know,
soul,
same insight that a person could have. It'd be nice to think that, and it's probably true. What my concern is that maybe people don't care, you know, because it's just like saying good music and bad music. A lot of people don't know the difference. So I worry that even though it may be true that a machine can't do what a human being can, it'll be good enough that people won't care about the difference, and it'll you know, it'll take over. So I don't know what to say about it. It's obviously a disturbing thing, and I'm sure it's going to affect many people in many different professions, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know nobody knows what's going to happen, but it's a daunting concept, really.
Yeah. Like, I'll give you an example for me as a podcast host, producer, what the hell you want to call me, right? A lot of editing, a lot putting together transcripts and using other programs. In the past 6 months, and I use Riverside for those who don't know, Riverside.fm. Don't get paid for it, but it's a great product. In the past 6 months, when I put a podcast together, it will write the whole transcript of our conversation. Okay, I can edit with it. It'll give me a YouTube description, titles that I can pull from. So I use it as a tool from that aspect. It cut out a lot of time for me, you know, just to get down to the nitty gritty. I'm going to ask again the audience to comment, and I'll send you a snippet of that Notebook LM podcast on Eugene Ruffolo, just a short thing, and it'll scare the hell out of you. Just put podcast in the comments, and I'll send it to you. It's just it's neat, but you know what? There's nothing. I'll resort to this. There's nothing like being present, and I keep as I get older, remind myself to be present to people and actively listen to what they're saying. There's nothing like that. You know, I don't think AI can, they can do some things, but I don't know. When it's soul to soul, there's a song for you, soul to soul. That's a great way, you know, it's a great direction and a great experience to have, you know, being present with each other. That's what music is, you know, to me. To me is guys like you, Eugene, can articulate things that I may not be able to say or sing, but I feel it certainly when I hear you sing it or you put together your songs and your production, and it's a beautiful thing. It's kind of a cool thing. So, so what's the future? What do you got coming down the pike? Where do you see? Where's the direction for what you're going to be doing next?
Well, just to I don't want to get negative.
No, that's
in keeping with that discussion, and it becomes increasingly, things are changing so much in the music business and in the world that it's like you just sometimes it's hard. It gets hard after you've been doing it for many, many years, as I have, to try to continue to find the motivation, the meaning, the meaning in it, and convince yourself that it's worth doing, because the marketplace is so screwed up now with music. As I'm sure you know, like there's no way to make money. Streaming is a nightmare. But that being said, you continue doing. I have every intention of continuing to do what I do.
Well, you create to create.
Yes,
that's for sure. But you also got to live and survive.
You do, and there's it's not even a choice, really. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. It's like I feel like I'm going to be doing this whether I want to or not, because it's just what I do.
You're wired. You're wired that way.
To do that, but it is demoralizing. You still want to feel like people are listening. There's a value to it, and unfortunately, we connect. I think it's human nature to associate being paid and being compensated as it's a barometer of your worth. It shouldn't be, but it's impossible to not have that association. So it just becomes difficult. But in asking what's in the future, I released a record this year. Well, no, last year. But I have a lot of songs, and I'm anxious to get to do another record.
Well, let me interrupt you. Because I've talked to younger artists that their thought process is, hey, I want to keep my fans engaged, so I'm going to put out EPs, 3 or 4 songs, bing, bing, bing. Personally, I'm a fan of albums,
right? Because
it really pulls everything together. There's a thread between it. And I'm old school, where I used to wear them out, flip them over and just take the whole thing in. Yeah. I assume you're in that same mode of releasing albums and not EPs.
I am, but I am thinking about it because I very much, love the album format. That's how I grew up. I still feel it's nice to have a body of work that has some kind of cohesive theme, and to release something that is indicative of the place you were in that moment in your life as an artist. So I do love albums. But, as with everything else, it's hard to fight the tide, because things, there is a compelling argument for the single. And I've noticed it with my last record, because I released one. Originally I was going to release a number of singles and then release the album. But I ended up releasing one single, and then I had hired somebody who was going to be a radio promoter to promote it, and they wanted to release the record in a certain time period, so because that's when they had the time to work on it. So They sort of pushed me in the direction of releasing the record. So I put out a single, then I released the whole record, and then I got a radio promoter in Europe who wanted to release a single as well. So I released another single, and I noticed that in terms of my, streaming numbers, those singles did so much better than the record itself. They actually almost had more streams, just the 2 of them, than the entire record. So I realized that there is something to be said for that single, because it gives you an opportunity to draw attention to it. Again, like if you release a record, you put it out there, you do whatever promotion you can, and it's sort of, that's it. But when you're doing singles, you can continue to kind of engage your audience. So there is an argument for it. I resisted a little bit, because like you, I do like the album format, but I'm questioning it now. I haven't fully figured that out, but and there's something to be said for just constant engagement with your audience as well. So I don't know. I haven't completely figured that out yet, but
You know, it's interesting. I had a CBS executive on, Lou Vaccarelli. He's retired now. Did a lot of printing for albums and stuff like that. Long Island guy, great guy. 21, he was an executive in CBS. And looking back historically, you know, when I was a 13-year-old kid, I'd go to Pergamon's and buy a 45 because I could spend 50 cents and I couldn't spend whatever an album cost at that time. So that was my threshold into that. You know, something's never changed. You know, the EPs are the singles, the 45s of today, you know, to get something that'll hook somebody. But now there's a lot of, I'm a little frustrated because there's a lot of gimmicks when it comes to social media. You know, let me do a crazy dance video to have you hear my song, or, you know, it's just kind of peculiar. I looked at your videos. I like the simple, let me hear a nice acoustic, you know, vibe to it, and it brings you to a certain place as well. And I see value in that, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like the people, even TikTok and stuff, which I haven't really explored, but they'll tell you that, yeah, it's better to do 10 seconds. Like you said, with gimmicks, there's a lot of...
You may or may not know this, but on Spotify for Artists, which is just another offshoot of Spotify for you, you can do, I think, a 30-second video to make a connection with your audience. You know,
right.
I'm Eugene Ruffolo. How are you? You know, bing, 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 bing. And then, you know, maybe it ties into that thing in my mind of, gee, I want to know a little bit more about this person who's singing such beautiful music. And for me, for an album, I'm talking here too much, you know, reading the liner notes, it was cool, you know.
Right,
That's
it was
how,
cool.
That's how you got the backstory, you know, on the artist. So we definitely will find you once a month at least with the Cosmic Orchestra in Manhasset, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's going to be a link for that in the description, as well as Eugene's music and links to his videos and all that. Hey, Eugene, it was a blast having you.
It was great.
Appreciate your time. You're welcome back. There's so much I didn't get to, but I don't want to overplay my hand.
No, not at all. I'm happy to speak.
All right, brother. Until next time, as I always say, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, let the music take you on a journey. See you next time.